Do you have a sport or working dog and you feel like you've hit a plateau in your training? Do you feel like you're doing all the right things, but your dog just is not making the progress to the next level? I've met a lot of people in our online elite canine athlete program, a lot of high-level competitors. Frequently when they come to me, they feel like their dog has kind of reached its max, whether it's, jumping the furthest they can jump, racing the fastest that they can go. And every time I've had somebody come to me in that situation, even if the dogs were doing really well, there was always something that they could be doing to take their dog to the next level. So what I want to talk with you today about is, has your dog hit that plateau? Why might your dog be at that plateau? And what can we do to get your dog over to the next level? I'm going to give you 3 things to consider. And these will be things that could possibly, with some slight adjustments, could make all the difference in your training. But before we do that, I wanted you to think about, and you want to rule out a couple things. You want to make sure, number one, is your dog where he or she at because of a physical limitation? If you feel like you're doing everything right and your dog's just not progressing, do some blood work, check with your vet, and just make sure your dog is healthy and there's not a physical reason why you're seeing that. I live in the Northeast. Lyme disease, a lot of these tick-borne diseases are super, super common. I can't tell you how many times I've trained with people, sport dog competitors, they're doing all the right things and their dogs are just kind of not recovering fast, just not doing as well performing as you would think they should with the level of training. And just about every time when these dogs went and got checked up, they had Lyme disease. So make sure you rule that out. Make sure there's no physical reasons, health reasons why your dog might not be progressing. Also, another example with my own dog, Knox, I found out just a simple change in his diet made all the difference. So when we were training and competing, I found out that I really needed a high performance food. What I was giving him was not giving him sufficient energy for what he really needed to be doing super high intensity protection sports. So he was super intense. He's a Belgian Malinois, and I had to change his diet. I had to change the food and also supplementation, like when I would supplement and make sure that I helped him in that post-exercise recovery. So those are a couple things just right off the bat that you want to make sure are in alignment with what you need for your dog. Number one, make sure there's no physical issues going on. Number 2, is your dog getting the nutritional needs that he or she needs for the activities that you're doing? So if those are all in order, and that is not the reason, if you cannot use that as the explanation for why your dog is not progressing, there are 3 other things that you really want to look at to help your dog get through that plateau and take your dog to the next level. The first thing is, are you overtraining and are you giving your dog adequate recovery time? So one of the reasons why you might hit a plateau is your dog is not getting sufficient recovery time. That could be due to a couple things. You could be just simply overtraining, training too hard, training too many days, and your dog is needing some rest and recovery. Those muscles the body needs to physically recover, right? The other thing, as I already mentioned, is when you look at your exercise and you look at hydration and supplementation, are you giving your dog what it needs to recover from exercise? So things like being slightly dehydrated, not being well hydrated before, during, and after training. Also, we do know research shows that those different supplements created for exercise recovery for dogs can be super effective. Well, more effective if they take in those supplements within 20 to 30 minutes after exercise. Now, if you can't give them those supplements soon after training, definitely give it to them if you're training really, really hard and they need that recovery. So the first thing you want to look at is, are you overtraining? Are you giving your dog sufficient time to recover? And are you also helping that recovery process through whatever you're feeding them, through hydration, through nutrients? So that's the first thing that you might want to consider, making some small adjustments to help take your dog to that next level. So the second thing that could be holding you back, and this is a really, really common thing that I see, is we are creatures of habit and we tend to fall into routines, right? Kind of doing the same thing, the same old. If we have a particular sport that we're training, or maybe you do a couple different sports or a job that you do with your dog, we tend to kind of train the same things, the same exercises, certain days of the week. Saturday is maybe our club training day. Maybe Wednesday is when you're doing some kind of drill practice. And when we train, we tend to fall into kind of routines, a certain amount of time, so many repetitions. And so what happens is your dog, when you first start training, your dog's body adjusts to that routine. And if you stay in that routine, just kind of stay consistent with the overall workload, the days per week, the amount of time that you're doing, the types of exercises, your dog hits a plateau, just like us. So if I'm going to the gym and let's say I'm running on the treadmill, I do 3 days a week and I run 3 miles each time. The first time when I'm starting, it may be hard and my body has to work hard. And over time, my body will adjust to doing 3 days a week, 3 miles on the treadmill. But what happens if I just keep doing that routine, my body adapts to it and then I hit a plateau. So you want to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of always doing kind of the same thing, doing that same routine, and the dog's body's gotten adjusted to the exercise, and then you don't take it to the next level. So we have to give the body time to adjust, but then periodically we have to progressively overload the body. Whatever it is you're wanting to see improvement on, we need to push the body just a little bit more, put more demands on the body, give the body time to adapt to that exercise again for a period of time. It might be a few weeks. And then when the body adapts to that, we have to then push them to that next level. And there's a variety of different variables that you might change. You don't want to change a whole bunch of things at once. And that's going to be very individual depending on what it is you're wanting to see improvement. So are you wanting to increase the distance? Are you wanting to increase the days per week? Are you trying to increase repetitions of, how many repetitions of something you're doing? But basically, you're going to need to mix things up. You're going to mix things up with the types of exercises, the different muscle groups that are being engaged, the frequency, the intensity, the amount of time of the activity that you're doing. You need to change things up to be able to then take the dog to the next level. So look at your training routine and see, have you kind of fallen into just those patterns and those habits of just kind of doing the same thing, the same types of exercises, the same things throughout the week, the same amount of time you're dedicating to it? Because if that's what you're doing, and I know many, many people, I'm guilty of it, it's really easy to fall into that when you're training for a particular sport or a job. We need to mix things up. So again, want to change things up, you give the dog's body time to adjust. And then once they've spent some time in that new routine, you're going to have to mix it up again. You have to constantly be mixing that up if you want to keep progressing and seeing your dog moving further along. So number 2, that's the second thing that you want to look at. And there may be some very easy changes that you might be able to do that will make all the difference. Then the third thing that you want to consider is, have you fallen into kind of a lack of consistency in your training and a lack of consistency in the right areas? So you may be doing the right things, you may be mixing up your training, you may be progressively overloading the body at certain periods of time, but then maybe you're taking 4 or 5 days off. Maybe you do a certain type of training and then it might be a couple weeks before you get back to it. Or you might have a weekend warrior where you're really only training 1 or 2 days during the week on the weekend, and the body's just not getting sufficient work, not enough consistency to go to the next level. And again, this is something I see a lot. Again, it's something that I've struggled with personally. When you've got a busy work schedule, you have a busy life, other things going on, it can be really hard to be very consistent. You need to typically be doing things more than just once a week. Usually you have to be doing things a few times a week and be super, super consistent and staying up with that routine. Again, we don't want to be stuck in the exact same routine all the time, but we have to have consistency. If I go to the gym and I'm lifting, say, 25 pounds and I'm doing it 3 days a week, and I take a month off and come back to the gym, I tell you, I'm going to feel the difference. It's going to be really hard. There's going to be deconditioning. So we have to have consistency, and you have to have consistency in the right mix of different types of exercises. So what I see with the lack of consistency and balance with a lot of times for many, many people is they may be consistent with certain exercises. Usually it's the exercises related to their job or sport, but then they're not consistent in other areas. So you need a really well-rounded, balanced fitness program. And you have to be, if you truly want your dog to reach their best performance, you want a balanced fitness program for a canine athlete, just like a human athlete, where you're doing things like cardiovascular training, you're doing strength training, you're doing balance and body awareness, your dog is getting days for recovery, you're doing stretching, you're incorporating massage. So if you really want to help your dog get to their full potential, you need to be able to be consistent in having that balanced routine with hitting all those different areas. And frequently we can do an exercise that hits more than one category at a time. For example, I may be doing cardiovascular training I'm running with my dog and we're running up a hill, right? So here we're doing cardio and we're also doing strength training going up the hill, right? We might be doing some exercises on FitPause equipment. So we could be doing strength training, doing exercises on the equipment, but then also we're getting body awareness and balance while they're on the equipment. So don't get too overwhelmed and go, oh my gosh, I have no time to do all of this. It doesn't mean you need to spend, 20 minutes every day in each category, but you do want to make sure that it's balanced and that consistently, ideally on a weekly basis, where you're getting in some cardio, you're getting in some balance and body awareness, you're getting in some strength training. And of course, you're training within your job or sport that you're doing. So we need to be consistent and we need to be doing it not sporadically. We need to have it multiple times throughout the week with sufficient time for recovery also. Now, this is a whole nother conversation. We're not going to go into this today, but be watching for some other videos that I'll be posting. But I do want to share with you, if you want to know more, and you want to kind of evaluate where your dog is right now in what are you doing in your training, how consistent are you, where are you in those different categories? Are you doing really, really well in the cardiovascular training and maybe you're not doing enough of the strength training? Are you doing a lot of balance and body awareness, but maybe you're not doing enough cardio? So I have for you, if you've not already downloaded it, it's called the Canine Fitness Planning Guide. It's free, a downloadable, like a little worksheet for you to go through. And I have a training for you. It's about 50 minutes long. And I go through each of these categories. And I also give you examples, like what are some examples of strength training? What are some examples of body awareness and balance? What are some examples of stretching? And I walk you through and you'll have an opportunity to assess and look at your own weekly program, what's happening right now. And I'm going to give you some suggestions and some ideas of what you might start tweaking to make your program more balanced, more consistent, and help take your dog to the next level. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just check out the description. I'll have that link there and some other free resources for you. If you happen to be listening to this on my podcast, again, just check the resources, check below or above, wherever you're getting access to this. And I will give you, it's called the Canine Fitness Planning Guide. Make sure you download it. Again, it'll have a little worksheet for you. And I have a free training for you that will walk you through that with lots of examples. So thanks so much for listening. Stay tuned. Be sure to follow us. I'm going to be putting out a lot more content for you, some new stuff. We got some older stuff, and I'm going to give you some more tips and strategies for moving forward in these areas. So if your dog has hit a plateau, check out these 3 things that we talked about today. Check out the Canine Fitness Planning Guide, and I would love to hear from you and let me know what would you like to hear in our next video or podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.